My next guest is Professor Zonic Zynth. How you going?
Hey, I'm doing fine. How are you, Marco?
Good, thanks. Thanks very much for joining us on the show.
Always welcome.
Tell us a bit about yourself. How long have you been producing music for, and when did you start the Professor Zonic Zynth project?
Well, if I remember back, that was in about 1996. That was the first time that I was also confronting with the synthesizers and with music in general. My father just told me, take some keyboard lessons. That will just make you a little more sensitive for the music in general. And we just bought a keyboard that was a Roland E35, if I remember correctly. That was a certain MIDI basic keyboard. It was just made or built to call up sounds, not only like the GX7, like the Synthetix. So you just had the sounds, you could play them, and with the expansion cards you could also add some parts or instruments that you would like to play, but it was not that variable or also flexible as the DX7 or maybe the D50 series. We're just stuck to a few sounds, and I think about 2 years later I was completely bored and took it apart, took it to the flight case and put it away, and there was so much dust on the case, and I think it's about in 2001 there was the next attempt to make something out of the talent, the musical talent, and it was again my father approaching me and telling me, well, how about guitar lessons? And he's since the day that he was listening music, just like me, he was always fascinated by sounds and the shadows. I recall that saying him, and he just taught me the Fender guitars and then both acoustic and electric guitars. And for I think another 2 years, he was again showing me how to perform and how to play and what to think of, what to look out for and what to avoid while playing. And that was later a little improved, and I could just play the lead guitar, and there was quite simple playing. But the real music production then just started in early 2008, many years later, basically about chiptunes. I had the desire or the intention to produce just 8-bit music, suitable for real NES games. And you had just the few channels with square sounds, triangle, the noise, and DPCM. But after also displaying them and exchanging them on the net, the thing that was actually getting me into it was not fulfilling, and I was just seeking for new possibilities, new chances. And at that time it was the need for a realistic format. So I was looking for 16-bit and much more, and need so heavy-duty gear like real synthesizers, and not that chiptunes and those I think Nano Loop was one device I was just using at the very beginning, quite complex, or just the classic Game Boy handheld and some focus hexadecimal level and tune-up that was quite confusing at the end. Then by the month, step by step, I was buying some more equipment, listening to classic retro, so I could gain my own experience and also establish my little home studio then in a basement when I lived in my house where I grew up. And then I just used basically most samples, nothing that was synthesized at the very beginning. That was considering rumblers. And later I had the chance to get all these classic real hardware synth that I also prefer nowadays. That's the DX7, the JP8, the M1, D50, the KX5, and some others to really hit it off. So that's the best source that you can get to produce all these sounds, like great classics like Jan Hammer or Faltermeyer or whoever. Yeah. And then a few years later I also met MPM, which is a multi-pack, in about early 2009. There was one contact who really coined and impressed me with this, to say, very, very marvelous sounds. Well, it was building up these dreamscapes, and there was floating synths in the air, and perhaps many tracks resembled each other, but it was not that bad because it was always taking the attention, and it was a real hit. And I think then in 2010 it was Michael Glover and the Rosso Corsa guys. I think it was shortly before my birthday at 2010, at summer. It was about some hip hop and rap tracks and just knocking them off on YouTube, and he was replying, "Man, great track, whatever." And after a while, we just had the contact. We were both focusing on our own career, I guess, and then others joined or left whenever, or completely stopped with producing music. And the synonym or the name Zonic Zynth, or Professor Zonic Zynth, as many people try to call me for the professional sounds, it was built in about 2011.
Now, your new album Nemesis only just came out last week. A soundtrack style LP with a lot of outrun action tracks throughout. What can you share with us about the production of the album, and what was the inspiration behind it?
Well, the first thing to mention is that I've always been really fascinated by dystopian movies, so that there's a fiction story perhaps in about 20 or 30 years happening in the future. I think the first part, or novel and movie, that was Brave New World, as one of the pioneers, movies from the 50s. And I always like this criticism of the system in general, like the inspiration that current events are happening worldwide, like this warfare, corruption, diseases, poverty, violence, lacking education, financial recession, and espionage concerning NSA, and so many other topics. And it was just going curious and reading a lot and trying to get all these information and then reproducing them in pure sound or waveforms. There are no personal emotions to it, but just it's meant to be in like a wake-up call in synthesized form. And I think each track took me about, let's say, 7 hours straight work. Sometimes I had to stretch all the work when my day job just couldn't or wouldn't let me work straight up. So I had some parts, and then some days left, and I couldn't come up with anything. It was horrible, and then I had to cut back and sit, okay, let's postpone the work and the recording sessions for 1 week or a day. And then later it was all about the setting up, arranging, the recording and remastering. And for drum and percussions, I was just using the sequences to be more precisely and to get the accuracy all out of it. And having the fictional plots and images in front of my eyes were really helpful to come up with all various, also scurril and really fantasy-like sounds. And another part is Gator Carnage. That's also I've written the plot for, playing in or set in 1984, and it's like magic. Just closing the eyes or watching movies, and there are some parts left, and I just focus and try to get this moment with the synthesizers.
I wanted to ask you about my favourite track called Anarchy off the album before we play it. Now, I love the dirty bass line and also the drums and progressive melodies in particular. What can you share with us about the production of that track? Did it take you long to produce? It's quite a complex track.
Well, Anarchy is originally called Zero Tolerance. I just put that for short preview originally onto Bandcamp for, I think it was in 2013 in spring, in summer, and that was also changed. The title was changed to fit the album. So there's a rather dark background and the atmosphere with the vibes, and that's also put by Anarchy. That was just the title I would like to sound it and to put that on the album. And I think the reference was also concerning Escape from New York. Yeah, one of my favorites as playing at night. And I had that watching, and on my mind there were some scenes at night taking part, and the mood for some inspirational energy, and that was taking me. I was just fiddling around the keys, just recording some ideas, and then playing with the filters, and then just the bass line, and somehow layering it. And I think it was about 5 hours straight to the morning that time, because I had the time left to finish and accomplish my mission, as I call it. And was pretty happy with it, and later tried to do some more compressions to make the overall sound much better. And the complexity is also through these rich sounds. I think the 4/4, the beat is nothing special. I tried to skip some parts, some snare drums and some kicks and some variations. Also with the toms, very, very significant, like my trademark. There's toms and there's always the sound effect.
Well, let's play this awesome track. This is Anarchy.
It sounds like someone's having a party. Let's go. It'll be fun.
You know how we feel about parties. They're hot and loud and crowded, and the only reason anyone goes to them is to pick someone up. Now, why would we want to do that?
Do you have any major influences in your music, or what inspires you to create your amazing brand of 80s retro synth music?
Well, must have been something about this music in general, because I've always been fascinated by the retrospective music, beginning in the late 60s to 70s. And I remember when I was very little my first steps moving. I was approaching the Fender guitar in the living room, and meanwhile there were MTV running, I think it was Michael Jackson, Tina Turner or something, and I was trying to clumsily walk towards the screen and touch the display or the screen in general, and there was DX7 playing, and there was the first remarkable memory I have concerning the music, and perhaps that also fetched me and totally zoomed me into the 80s. There's synthesized movie scores, like B-movie scores, which had the best instrumental pieces, and various soundtracks, pop music in general, and I was amazed by Top Gun, Rocky IV, The Running Man, and old school wrestling, like when it was still called WWF and not WWE. The track, I don't know if you know Jake the Snake Roberts. I think the first and the first and the third attempt of Jim Johnston just knocked me right off the socks, and that was the hit, and it's still running if I go out working out. The guys, it's always running through my headphones, and it's just energizing, and those snare drums and the synths are just magic. Still, after all these years, and will always be.
They had some really good music in the walkout music for the wrestlers. Some of it was really good over the years.
Yes, and I think it was, well, just 3 or 4 tracks that you could listen anytime. Some of those were a little thoughtful. I don't know if you remember those guys with the Arrogance theme. There was Ric Flair, Rick the model. Yeah, that was great with the saxophone. That was quite an impression, and still difficult to get this just by synthesizers. And I was trying to get, I take saxophone lessons too, but then somehow couldn't go on with that and just stick to the original synthesizers.
Your drums are always outstanding in all your tracks. I think it is your strong point, to be honest. What do you use to create these amazing drum sounds?
Where drums certainly resemble a huge fundament, like a skyscraper, or with all its solid basement and the concrete, gives a track a certain structure and audible orientation to the viewer. It's also giving the chance for rhythmic elements and suspense, or in general severity. And my favorite hard synth still, that's the classic DX7 by Yamaha, the JP8 or Jupiter 8 by Roland, the Korg M1, and the Roland D50 and the Yamaha KX5. Also the Juno series are quite of advantage, and the Sonic Mirage, like the Prophet and ARP 2600, of course with the Synclav. And that's, I think, the golden Olympus of synthesizers. I've had more than 100 drum machines that I mostly sampled for portable purposes, so that I didn't have to plug them all in and just seek for 2 or just 1 sound. And later I always imported them to loop sequencers, like the Roland 5 and 8. Other drum machines like the classic, that's Roland TR-808, the 909 Lin drums, and specifically recently the Boss DR-660. And the current DAW I'm using, like the program that I'm running through all the synths and recording and mixing, editing, whatever, that's from Magix. It's the Samplitudes. That's the series that I really like, and it can go, I think, beyond anything. It's for so many purposes, and it's everything done live.
Cool. The Lindrum seems to be a very popular one with everyone that I interview.
That's true.
Now, are you currently working on anything? And do you have any projects coming up in the future you'd like to share with us?
Honestly, there are many things on my mind happening, and the first is that I still held on call for a German movie that's called Night City. There are some score trailers that were available since, I think, 2012. I've done some parts or original scores that they would like them to have, and just told them, okay, you can just have them for playback and use them for, I think, 30 seconds or something. Then, of course, there are some private tasks that I'm not allowed to share with anyone. That's jobs like mixing, some secret underground stuff, and just, mixing, editing, remastering, also composing specific music per signed contracts. And they are preparing for some radio broadcast and streaming interviews in addition to this one. So there's some interest also showing and rising, especially concerning the last album and after I released this album. Then my new album also is in progress, that has a first attempt or first draft that I was trying to record today. That was called Renegade. It's pretty long, full, thick sound that will probably come to a fictional movie soundtrack or original score. That's like 2 tracks combined in one, and this is also supposed to play at the very end of that fictional movie. But I'm just at the very first steps about it, and I'll see where I'll be going with it. Something else of the collaboration project, I think most of us in the Synthetix group has remarked that's I think Mike George just started about 3 weeks ago concerning these Flow Records. Together with the guys, and just asking us for collaborating and participating. That's in the anthology for covers concerning the Streets of Rage series. I'm also taking one of these tracks. It's pretty finished and ready for playoff, but as Mike also told us not to share with anyone, I will just keep it quiet and just post it whenever the entire album is going to be online. I'm also asked for some compositions concerning the Christmas tracks. It's a new, I think, also an anthology album with many artists, having no idea at the moment what that could be, just some bell sounds in the ears, or referring to Wham! Last Christmas or something. That's rather, let's say, difficult project or time at the moment, but I will take that step by step. That's no problem.
I'd like to ask you about the first track of yours I ever heard, Soleilfreak's Theme. An Italo track, it was an instant classic. I know it's been a while, but is there anything at all you can share with us about that track, please?
Well, this track is one of my very few that have very controversial background. I think it was in about 2012 when people, or one part just loving it and going nuts, listening it all the time, and others just hating it for some reasons. And then there were
I saw the comments. It's so stupid.
I don't know really why. Okay, it was a matter of distortion because it was just meant to be a preview. I was thinking at the time about doing them again, recording them, and bringing them out for real high definition and perhaps for sale too. And then I was realizing to do something else, and good ideas to program the own patches like the DX7, making another step into another milestone. I also have the intention to create some typical Italo disco flair and feeling. There was like a live TV concert feeling. Therefore, I used various those panned and gated claps and the cheering crowd at the end as one of the most influential elements, making it an interaction between composer fictional starlet like Sabrina standing in front of the audience and performing, and to make it some played alive. And the participation in RFM party, I remember, that was in France, also live. I personally met her, and that was a fascinating sight by Sabrina Salerno, and the track also meant to be a dedication to her and the work she's done, and the performances.
That probably wraps up the interview then. You can find all of Professor Zonic Zynth's music on his Bandcamp page, which is zoniczynth.bandcamp.com. Now, he's also got a SoundCloud page with a lot of his music up, which is Zonic Zynth. Now, I understand you've got a cool YouTube channel that you've just put together again.
Yes, indeed.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's basically about the previews. I've made so many progress and so many tracks in the past that it's just giving also fans and friends or people, followers, the opportunity to look them up and have a listen. And later go to the official Bandcamp page and listen to the full entire scores and tracks in better resolution.
Cool. Now, what's the actual channel itself? Is it Zonic Zynth or?
Yeah, it's just named like the synonym list.
Okay, great. Now, was there any shout-outs or thanks you'd like to give before we say our goodbyes?
Oh, there are lots of people I would like to mention. Well, first of all, Norman as Alpha Boy, one of really, really talented guys, and get to the actual sound of the 80s much, much better with every track he's doing. Then, of course, Action Jackson, that's Andy or Andrea Zanini, one really cool guy from Italy, who has also established his own, I think, label and recording. Of course, my family, my friends, my girlfriend, and everyone else. There's too many people. I think I would like to give a shout out personally to Jan Hammer, to Harold Faltermeyer, to so many people. I just came up with, I think, 100 persons. That's Vince Titula or whoever.
Well, thanks very much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you.
Yeah, to me too. Thank you.
Now let's play this track we were talking about just before. This is Salerno's theme